Today we talk about the differences in IQ among the racial types. I've been watching a video called "Do Africans Really Have an IQ of 70?" Now 70 is obviously the lowest IQ you would ever measure. There's chimpanzees that fare better than that. Now that's worrying, but that's another topic. That's worrying because basically in Africa things are different. We never hunt animals to extinction. I mean, you look at Europe, there's no ape in sight. There's the Barbary macaque, but that can't really be considered as an ape. Either apes can't survive here or they've been hunted to extinction. Neanderthal used to live here, but we hunted them to extinction. So something happens to the human being when they get to live in Europe. But there's many theories regarding that. Back to the matter at hand, the IQ spread among the races. Now, according to that video by the American-born public, it's a good video, very scientific. If somebody refers to scientific, experimentally obtained data, you can't, you shouldn't feel defensive or you shouldn't feel insulted in any way, because this is actual data that's been collected in the field. Now, it shows that Asians are on average 106 IQ, Europeans 100, United States blacks, which I'll call diasporan Africans, are 85, and Africans are 70 on average. Yeah. Now, when you look at the IQs that they're measuring, the IQ test that they're using to measure these IQs, it's designed in such a way that you have to apply reasoning, Western reasoning to it in order to get the answer. But the problem with Africans, once something looks natural, we've been on the planet longer, so we've learned not to predict, if you like. It's a bit like quantum physics. Just because you see something doesn't mean that the next thing you're going to see is going to follow a pattern. Nature doesn't work like that. Sometimes things happen randomly in nature that change what your expected result was going to be. Yeah. Obviously, even the sun coming out every morning, even quantum physics will tell you that if it's been doing that for a billion years, it's due a time when it doesn't. Yeah. Or did that already happen, as in Joshua, the walls of Jericho, and so forth. But back to the IQ thing. So this guy goes on to give examples of certain IQ tests that they conducted on these Africans, things that threw them off. Okay, with the first one, you say, well, look at that. You can see stripy bottoms, filled bottoms, circle, square with a filled bottom. Boom. Answer. That threw off most Africans, but majority of them got it. So it's the IQ test is designed in such a way that when you look at this, you say, right, even if you read it this way, you do circle, stripe, circle filled, something, then square filled. You logically, either way you read it, you logically have to come to this conclusion. That's if you reason like a European. We're going back to Plato, Socrates, and so forth, where you look at life and you say, right, I see patterns in life, and these patterns have no break in them. Even DNA has mutations, so there is no pattern that doesn't have a random break in it. That's how the Almighty works. So an African would look at this and say, right, my brains would tell me that that's next, but through experience, I can't really say that. So he'll be stuck because he's in his experience, he's used to things that he knows, that he can see that that's going to happen next. But then weird things always happen where it doesn't turn out that way. So you learn not to expect to see what you anticipated. Yeah. So although in the back of his mind, within a split second, he anticipates that to be next, but from his life experience, he knows that what you anticipate doesn't always come to fruition. So that's why they're reluctant to give the obvious answer. So back to what the chap was saying in the video about the IQs being that spread. What I've noticed that they're using the European as the datum or the reference mark. The average European IQ is always going to be 100 because they look at average European IQ and say this is the average, and every average is measured relative to that. But that's wrong anyway, because if you was to look at the Asian IQ and you average everything to the Asian IQ, where the Asian is now the normal IQ, you notice that European have now gone to 94 and we've gone to 66. Now that's very low. Yeah. So, but they've also slipped to 94. There was a time, maybe the 1800s, 1900s, where at the height of European domination in the world, where their IQ would have been 200, 300. Yeah. Where if you call their IQ 100, ours will have to be in the 20s and 10s. There was a time when it was like that. But we've caught up to the point where Asians are better at being European than Europeans. So they've really learned how to be European reasoning, how to reason like Europeans. Yeah, they've learned it to a point where the reason, their European reasoning is better than the native European themselves. Yeah, so they actually know Europeans better than they know themselves. So basically, it's quite concerning to me, being the black man in the diaspora, that we have that or that, either way you look at it. Yeah, if we're living in the West, in European-based ideologies, among predominantly European-based ideologies, then we use that rather than that. But if you was to look at blacks in Asia, for example, then we'll be dealing with that. Oh dear. So let's deal with a predominantly European based reasoning. Now, give me a second. Yes, if we consider this from a social point of view, whenever average Asians, Europeans, and Africans and African Americans interact, the African's going to have the short end of the stick. Yeah. Or if it's just Europeans and African Americans interacting, the African American will have the short end of the stick. This is the one, when I mean short end of the stick, no pun intended, but it would be the short end. But this is, my concern is that basically we need to make sure that our intellectually challenged fellow brethren are not taken advantage of. So it's a human race's concern as an intellect. Whenever you see a European and an African there, you're gonna have to intellectually, based on statistical data, assume that the European is using that one as a dog's body, as someone who does his dirty work. He's gonna be someone who is easy to manipulate. Most black on black crime in general is other races that instigate that. It's very easy to turn an African American or an African against his own kin, because they don't know any better. On average, they don't know any better. Yeah, so we need to stop that from happening. The only way you can stop that is don't be offended. Don't be offended. You can see the statistical data, experimental data is there. Don't be offended. If you get offended, we'll never get anywhere. Yeah, deal with the facts as they're presented to you. That's the fact. We on average are pretty dumb. So when you see Europeans interacting with Africans and you want to help, yeah, you try and make sure that they don't take advantage of the African in that situation. Now, Europeans are very protective of their intellectually challenged. I don't know if you ever tried to talk to an intellectually challenged European, or the other ones in the community will rally around to try and prevent you from taking advantage of them. Yeah, so we should have this kind of protection as a global community for the African American or the African. Whenever you see them interacting, you know that the African one is going to be used to maybe physically assault you, maybe to do criminal things. because he's been taken advantage of by much cleverer individuals. Yeah, so my aim in life has always been to educate African Americans and Africans. My IQ is in the region of 120, 140. I'm not quite a genius, but I'm pretty clever. And if that's nearly twice the IQ of an average African, what I have. So when I'm mixing around them, my brethren, I never look down at them, but I always try and educate them, try and get them to see things their way. Yeah, they're right in a way. You can't say this pattern is appearing, so therefore what I expect to see next is that, because life throws different things at you, and you learn to be pragmatic. You can't say, because I've seen that and that and then that, I expect this to be that. No, life, it might flip it upside down. It might, for one reason or another, it might flip it upside down. And even logical probability and set theory will tell you, once you see something, the chances of you not seeing it again are increased. So once you realize this pattern, the chances of you not seeing that pattern to completion is increased. So you can even say that the answer is anything but that. Yeah? Because I've seen a pattern developing. Once you realize the pattern, it stops happening. Once you realize how the diffraction takes place in the double slit, yeah, it stops happening. So once you realize that there's a pattern happening like that, the answer will be anything but that. African reasoning. Yeah. But you get them, I try to get my brethren to say, yes, that's true, but that's a 1 in a million chance. The most likely outcome is what you've anticipated. That's always going to be the most likely outcome, and once in a while you get something completely different. But just because something happens once in a while doesn't mean that you should change your idea of what normal is. When something happens, like you could say, women should stop dating men because one woman got raped. It's very, very unfair to say that. Or men should never get women drunk because one woman got raped from it, and then you change the whole law because of that. You shouldn't define your normal based on one-off experiences. Yeah, the norm is, once you see that pattern, it's gonna carry on being that pattern. Once you see the sun come up every morning, it's gonna carry on doing that. Once in a while, yeah, it might do something different, but normally speaking. So I try to educate the African to make them realize that yes, you're right. Yeah, what you anticipate is not gonna necessarily mean that that's what's gonna be, but generally speaking, what you anticipate is gonna come true. Is gonna complete the set. So I try to look after the African when I see him mixing with other races. I try to not interfere with their relationship, but try to educate him. Yeah, try to make him see things logically. Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a set of people, my people, who a European will come down to Africa with a mirror, and the man will give him his entire possessions. He said, "Whoa, I got a mirror here. I mean, we don't see value in the things they see. Like, you know, you want gold. Why do you want gold for? Who cares? Yeah. You want oil? What for? Who cares? Yeah. You give me a mirror. That's something interesting. So we value different things. Yeah. And we value the spiritual side in equal amounts to the living side. So that's why when you see a pattern developing, you know, as an African, that once the spirits and ancestors see you realizing that, once you know, you don't know. Yeah. So to me, as an African, the answer would be anything but that. Then I'll be really, really shocked. I'll be like, well, what could it be? I'll just choose any of them. It could be anything but that. Yeah. So that's what I'll write in that box. Yeah, so bear in mind that if what we anticipate is the norm, then Africans are pretty dumb. Yeah. Not that they don't know what the norm is. It's just that their approach to life is completely different. And we should preserve that, because when things do go wrong, most Europeans panic. Oh my God, something unusual happened. But most Africans are like, well, that was on the cards, really. you know. And more Western and European intellects are starting to reason like Africans. We're starting to realize that quantum physics is an African way of seeing things. Yeah, so you don't anticipate anything. And if you look at a quantum physicist, um, he'll tell you, if you look at that and you ask him what's going to come next, the answer is, I don't know until I see it. All of these can come next until you see it. So it's in the end, everybody will reason like an African, I suppose, but we need to preserve that. But whilst we're living among people who are like that, we need to bear that in mind and not become victim to them because of that stat. That's all I wanted to add.